What's going on, everybody? Today is October 24th. It's Tuesday, and you are listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. Today, we got almost the whole group with us. We got Beth, Aaron, Andy, Carl, and Brian, and we'll be hanging out with you today talking about AI in education, which we have talked about before, but today we wanted to really sort of dive a little bit deeper, niche down a little bit, and talk about personalized learning. And when you look at our show notes about things we wanted to kind of bring up today, some of the topics would include adaptive learning pathways, which I think is a huge topic that we could probably spend an entire 30 minutes on. Sort of a idea, just open discussion about what you think the future of a classroom looks like. And I think there's some really cool conversations we can have there. I have some ideas about what I think maybe the future looks like in the not too distant future. And then, just any real world applications. I came across a few myself. Some of them surprisingly are a few years old. They're before the last boom of learning models that we're all familiar with from last November, where educational institutions were already looking and digging into data to try to figure out how to help students and do some early identifiers and things like that. So that's what we have coming up for the conversation today. As always, does anybody have any sort of hot takes or any, first words? Got to come up with a good term for this. I don't get with Jimmy on this. Like we need the first take or the hot first thing, whatever it is. Go for it.
Let me jump in. So just coincidentally, I ran across, we've talked about this video before. You guys, I'm sure you've all seen it. It's this lady who was a teacher being interviewed about students using ChatGPT and whether it is cheating or not. Mm-hmm. And her bottom line, or the way she suggested they use this kind of tool, is accept that they're going to use ChatGPT, send them home to write an article or a paper or whatever, and then they come back to school the next day, and then they have to sit around and discuss it and improve it and understand it without using AI. So it was really interesting just to see that again, given the topic we're doing today. So I think her philosophy of, I think the bottom line is you can't avoid it. This stuff is coming, so you might as well figure out the best use for it.
I wish I could remember her name on TikTok. I know exactly you're talking about, Aaron, and I must have seen her video on TikTok, several, in February, which is crazy to think about. That she's not like a head administrator or anything else. She was just maybe an educational, or not educational. What my daughter would call ELA teacher. So language arts, stuff like that. I think she might have had a different topic, but she was amazing early on. She was the first person that, to me, really started to think differently about, okay, hold on a second. While everybody else was pushing and banning, from the get-go of we don't know what this is, so we're just going to ban it. I'm not saying that was the wrong move, temporarily till there was a feeling for it. She was one of the first people that was like, no, I'm thinking about this differently. The Pandora's box is open. I am not going backwards unless I get forced to. And this is how I'm going to use it to create even better critical thinkers, which, that part we've definitely talked about on the show before, about how we, I think, collectively feel like the future of AI in education can and should lead to better critical thinkers down the road. Students who can,
people that are good at remembering things and regurgitating facts.
Right.
Well, some people are just automatically good at that doesn't make them smart.
I grew up I can't say I love doing it, but I definitely grew up in a household that had the Encyclopedia Britannica books on a shelf. It took up 2 whole shelves in our living room. And I definitely have memories of my dad. You had to think about the question you were going to ask my dad, because there was a good chance he was going to go look it up. And you'd be like, oh, and then you'd be like, A, B, D, pull out the book. Remember yeah, right. The pages were paper thin wouldn't be the right word. Translucent would be the right word for those pages. You could see the light through them, and then you'd look and look and look all to find this one answer in this encyclopedia. That would now just be a very, very quick Siri query to your phone talking natural language. So I'm at least old enough to, I think most of us here are old enough to remember those days and having that kind of tools, and now where we are now. And I agree, why go back to rote memorization? Why would I go back to an encyclopedia on a shelf if there's a much better way to do it? And why would I continue to teach saying, hey, by the way, there's this bookshelf of encyclopedias when there's obviously a clearly better way. I'm open to any other discussions, but I do want to make sure we focus sort of on like sort of the sort of the pillars of what this conversation was about. Adaptive learning pathways, and just to sort of open that up, adaptive learning simply means exactly what the words sound like. Having a customized, if you will, tailored, specific, niched, whatever you want to say, whatever word you want to throw in there, learning plan per child. And we could talk about elementary education, but I think this also applies through college. I'm curious what you guys think, because this is the way I think of it. Okay, maybe my daughter's 12, so I use her as a barometer a lot of times of where she is in education and where I think it's going. She's still several years outside from college, but really not that far out from college. She's only like 5 years away from college, so closer to there than she is kindergarten at this point. And so I'm not sure. I mean, I live in Florida, so I'm not sure what's collected, and there's some ethical issues here and privacy that comes in as well. But I'm just thinking of this idea of if they started collecting quality data on my daughter through using algorithms and AI from day one, from the time she reached maybe pre-K, maybe there's algorithms and indicators of pre-K that would help. And they start immediately identifying how my daughter learns best, whether that's visual or whatever the case may be, rewriting or whatever the case is. Or they were identifying early on areas where she was going to need a little extra help. And that data builds year over year over year. Is it possible? Is the idea of AI in education in the future being that in some future state, my daughter is in high school, there's this massive built up data storage about my daughter and her learning methods, so that any class she lands in high school has got all that information built into it, and it's highly customized to her learning. And if that's the case, what is now the role of the teacher if every student in a classroom or space, an educational space, is on their individual learning platform? What does that mean? I'm curious to see what you guys think.
Well, part of what school does is learn in community, right? I think it emphasizes the community aspect. And so then you're able to, I mean, how amazing would it be if you're able to get a concept across in the learning style and with whatever like questions back and forth need to be answered for each individual kid. And then be able to have a community-wide discussion of like, how do we use this? Where is this a part of things? I mean, not only does that sound like a really exciting learning environment, it also prepares you for living in society and working with people. So, and I've really divin. It's morning. Sorry. I've dove into this. I have talked a lot about Mr. Reindeer. It is currently a GitHub thing, but
Do I know what that is?
and it's RANE deer.
What is that, Beth? What is that?
This is actually a prompt that you can put into. Sorry, now hide them all. Yes, that's from last show. It's a prompt that you can put into Ada, ChatGPT with the advanced data analytics, and it will take on the function of a teacher. What it does is ask you to identify your learning style, and one of them is analogy. And now when we get these amazing like papers that are really dense and academic of like a tweak you might do in a prompt, I upload the paper to Claude and I say, give me an analogy, bridge this to my current knowledge as though I'm in fifth grade.
I love
right?
that.
And so like preferably with baking, right? And so there's this whole thing like you're perfecting your chocolate chip cookie recipe. You could change the ingredients, you could change how you cook it, you can do both, right? Like I mean,
Yeah,
and
I
it's
love
like,
that.
oh, I got it now. I got it.
Or Andy, that might be, the farm for you, right? With the horses. And I haven't heard your whole layout there where you are, but I would imagine, if that's something that brings you joy or brings you passion, and you were able to, adapt your whatever the new topic is you're learning to me, I don't, I'm not smart enough to know all the scientific sides of this, but to me, that just seems like, oh, I've already got these like connected neurons in my brain. And instead of trying to create net new connections, I'm actually just adding on a little bit because I'm always basing it in something that I already understand well. And I just think like, oh my God, if you had every student and they had access to this, equity is such a huge part of this, is that I don't want to see AI leave more students behind. They actually cause more problems. That's maybe a side topic, but I get excited about the idea of a student who is excited about certain things, certain topics, and is able to, do what you just said, Beth, and be like, oh, explain it to me this way. I mean, and by the way, no teacher that I know is going to be upset about that. That is just allowing the teacher more tools to help that child and make the connections, while I agree, bringing in the human element. I mean, kids, I'm a firm believer that a kid needs a hug, like it, within the rules and all that stuff. But like a kid needs a hug. Sometimes they need a, hey, it's going to be all right. That kind of thing. I mean, I did growing up. And so I think there's a way for us to take some of these harder concepts off the table for the teacher and allow them to just be the amazing individuals that they are in shaping our students' future. I don't know. I mean, what's your guys' thought?
And like, why is that? And why is that? And why is that? Right? Like AI will go there with you. You are not taking time from the rest of the class. You are not annoying the teacher. Like, go as far as your curiosity can go. I find that exciting.
One thing I think I don't have kids, so I'll say that up front. But I remember back when I was in school, there's one teacher at the front of the class. You might be 20 or 30 kids in the class, and they can't get around to everybody and go do a deep dive on something, depending on either your level of interest in it and or your ability to understand and use it. So I think like mathematics classes, for example, I was pretty good at maths in high school, but there were people in my class that weren't. But my teacher did not have time to get to all of us and give us the in-depth training that we needed. And so I think AI can really do that. I actually did a little bit of research for this, and I ran across a product made by a company called Querium, Querium, and it's called Stepwise, and it's basically a mathematics training tool. And what it does is it allows a student to do, and I think it's probably aimed at the lower end of the grade level, but it allows the student to go home and do the mathematics practices. And the teacher's not interested so much in do they get the right answer, but how did they get to the answer? And what it does is it uses AI to guide them when they're making mistakes, so that they reprogram you talked earlier, Brian, about the neurons in the old brain. Instead of them making a mistake and being stuck with that, it's actually helping them recreate new neurons and understand the right way of doing it. And then the teacher can actually go in and look at how the student is doing it and better understand their requirements. So I thought not a parent, but I thought that was an interesting product, and it's certainly, I can see a market for that kind of thing. So, and I'm sure there's lots of products out there coming or already available like that.
I think one thing, because my daughter's 9, and she essentially where I see, she comes home and talks about certain students who can't get certain topics. It's just some topics just are more difficult for some than others. And I think as a student, as what the teachers are trying to do is, give them extra work. Whenever you have these parent teacher interviews, like each month, we would sit down and be like, okay, well, there's deficiencies in here. We'd like you to do more work in this area or reading or math or whatever area they're seeing. And I think like that AI guidance, in addition to the teachers, like it's like how we talk about personalization from a sales side, from a marketing side, you can do that personalization from an individual student side. So then you can start seeing, okay, here's the deficiency, or here's some skills that the student needs to level up in. to ensure that, you know, they're part of the learning like program, that they can complete the program, the grade level that they're in. So I think that would be the most beneficial, is to tailor those learning experiences. And then as you feed, I guess, the AI for each individual student, that AI can then, you know, take everything, all the work that they've done, and apply it, be like, okay, well, this is, it's not just your student is deficient or your student needs work here. It's like, here's how to get there. Here's the lesson plan. Here's the activities. Here's the exercises based on your students' learning patterns, behavior, like that kind of stuff. So it's, you start personalizing that education. What you were saying, Brian, like personalizing, but personalizing even deeper by feeding the AI all the stuff that they've done.
Yeah.
And I think it's a fair comment that we all have a different learning style. I'm
Yes.
you guys probably don't know this. I'm a twin. I've got a twin sister. She and I are very different when it comes to things like school, for example. In school, I was really good at it. It wasn't really her forte. But then there are things that she's really good at that I'm not good at. So it goes to show that I think that we all have a different learning style. And if AI can help us understand that by observing us, I think it can feed that back to us and help us get better in the way that makes sense to us as individuals. And as a teacher, that'll be a hard job to do for a class of 30 people.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Andy.
Okay, so my little tagline here says UX for training and learning. So I've done a lot of thinking about this, and let me just kind of put out what the historical perspective is. Like, you know, the way we address education today is really a Victorian model of, you know, one-to-many knowledge transfer. A master telling the students what the knowledge, you know, is, and they have to try to retain that. And so the focus of it is on, you know, what's the content that has to be transferred, how do we present that content, and how do we get through you know, this process of knowledge transfer. Well, the bad news is that and I'm quoting now from, you know, a leading AI oriented learning design master over at Cambridge University. Her name's Dr. Philippa Hardman. She has a Substack, which is useful to anybody who might. I'm going to put her spelling of her name in the private chat here. So if somebody wants to put that up on the screen, you can follow her on LinkedIn as well. But her thesis is that there has to be a transformation, because if we focus on knowledge transfer, even if we make it more palatable, as Beth suggests, by adding analogy that's a little more embraceable, you know, we're probably missing the transformation opportunity that AI presents. Because the real truth is that through their research, they've shown that when you attempt knowledge transfer, there's a huge amount of forgetting, such that the effect of it is that only 12% of the content is retained on average. That's in the corporate learning and development context, as well as in online learning. And the only way to change that is to actuate the content in some experiential way through different models of learning design. And so AI represents an opportunity to achieve that in a scalable way. You can create new experiences for individuals or groups, because we know that community first is essential to the learning experience, especially at the earlier stages. I mean, once we get to my advanced stage, you could just kind of spend your time alone in your room on a computer and learn things, but that's just not palatable, you know, to the youth. So AI is going to allow us to create coaches for individuals in the context of being in a classroom or in a group, and that's going to make for experiences that increase the rate of retention of the content that's being delivered. But now the fundamental question for me is, what what is this retention of content or knowledge? What value does that have in a world where AI can deliver it instantaneously, or it maybe eventually even immediately into your awareness? That knowledge collection is not as important as other kinds of skills. And I can't even venture to guess what the models of individual learning and group learning will be that are assisted by AI. But right now we're at a stage where AI is helping teachers by organizing content and generating content that it saves them time. So we're in this sort of efficiency model of delivering the same provably not effective method of learning. And what AI can do is probably lead us into a future where there's a whole new model of experience that's happening. And I'll stop there.
You know what, Andy, I would, this is one thing I've been really passionate about. I think even for the last, I don't know, 10 years, especially thinking about how education itself, but how we are taught. We are taught from primary, secondary, post-secondary. And I think if you look at, how the learning system came about, it's through industrial revolution, like how people learned. We have to memorize things to do things. But I'm like, well, I never thought that what we were doing, say, especially in like post-secondary or secondary, really prepared you to get into, I guess, real life, daily life, how to work, all those kind of things. But now with a tool like this, I think this is a great opportunity to upend the entire education system, upend entirely how you learn, where you learn, because you're not limited to that style anymore. I think we have to go beyond, hey, let's back to Lumiere's law. We don't have to fit this into how we currently do things. We can change how we do things entirely around this new thing instead of trying to fit it in. And that's where I think like those whole new learning behaviors, learning patterns, learning like just how we learn from, kindergarten to even how we learn as adults can completely change.
So that brings up
let me just say, as you're speaking, I'm imagining this future where education is gamified. The students wake up on campus and they're given a series of collaborative tasks that have to be done in order to achieve something in a game. And that's been designed overnight by AI to help each person in their role to get something that the AI knows through its evaluation methodologies. It knows that they need to learn. I'm excited by the idea of a totally different method, because some of the things that I've learned have been through those kinds of challenges that I had to meet with a team of colleagues, or earlier on other students in my group. Those are the things that are most memorable to me and actually taught me more about being human and living and learning than reading books.
It's like learning to, you can go and buy a book on it or go and watch YouTube, but you can learn to fly a plane, academically speaking. But if I stick you in a plane and let you go, you're probably going to kill yourself. So the learning is one thing, the regurgitating facts out is another thing, but actually implementing it, whether by yourself or with other people, I think is the part where we really start to absorb that knowledge and find it more useful.
Yeah,
so
and that
this
leads
brings
to
up an
VR.
interesting.
Okay, so let me just throw in there. So you're an advocate of VR, Aaron, but now is VR and AI together an interim model before you get to this idea that I just threw out there, which is, okay, you're on campus and you're learning, but every day is a new adventure. Rather than sitting in the classroom trying to make
popular, that was an app on your phone and you had to wander around and look at things in the real world on it. I can't remember.
Is that
So,
Pokemon Go?
yeah, yeah.
I can
So,
remember.
like,
Yeah,
the
That was
yeah.
revolutionary.
That's the
modern version
gamification
of that
of it.
is AI plus VR. I think you're right there, Andy.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I think my opinion on that is it's actually AI, right? AR. It's the augmented
Right.
reality, not the VR. That'll probably be the future of that. I could be wrong, but certainly the idea, and this kind of goes back to what I wanted to say was, you know, my buddy Evan Erdberg runs a company called Proximity Learning. He's a CEO. He started the company about 11 years ago, and they provide live virtual teaching to help solve the problem of lots of schools in the United States not being able to hire a teacher. And it's an amazing program, and he focuses on equity. Essentially, his goal is to bring equity to 1 million students because he feels like that might be the tipping point at which things really are able to change in education. So I love what he's doing, and so equity comes to mind for me a lot. One of the things I worry about is that, at least in the States, government moves awful slow, and even not even just government, but like what Florida is going to do versus what California is going to do in a public school is going to be massively different. And what I think you're going to find is what you're talking about is like the new Montessori type schools, right? It's going to be somebody is going to open up this AI future education school, but it's going to cost money. It's not going to be free. It's not going to be subsidized, and only certain families are going to be able to put their children into those educational institutions, and it's going to give them a leg up. Frankly, I think so. And what I fear is that if we don't continue, and there are amazing companies that are doing this now and nonprofits, but if we don't continue to figure out how to get AI into all the students' hands, and Evan is one of the people who says this a lot. Sending a child home for homework, you don't know what that child's situation is at home. You've got to help them while they're on campus. And if that means that you have to open up an hour early or the campus needs to stay an hour or two late so these students have access to these tech-enabled whatever, if it's AR down the road, if it's AI, whatever the case is, or just ChatGPT, and having a computer to do that on, he always is reminding, not me, but everybody, that the home lives of our students around the world are drastically different. And so we just need to continue to do a really good job and think about, there's these amazing opportunities for students and to I genuinely believe be a sea change on how education is approached. But I fear that it will be the private schools that do it first because they have the money and the VC backing and all this stuff. And some students will get that, but many won't. And we will unfortunately be in a future state where the haves and the have nots. And I do worry about that. I do worry about making sure that we don't pass by the most vulnerable of our population who are already struggling just to have the same educational experience, a la a teacher being at a school in Mississippi versus a teacher being in Brentwood, California, where there's going to be no issue with, pay and these kind of things. And so, anyway, just sort of an open conversation there.
I have two thoughts, and we're going to do TLDR really soon. One, I think that learning scaffolding is really important, right? So frameworks versus the having to be able to regurgitate the knowledge within the frame right away. But that's going to be an important thing to do. We talk a lot about jobs that are going away. Teachers' jobs aren't going away, but there is going to be a transition if any of these ideas come to the fore of what teaching becomes, right? So if it's more community-based, maybe you're more of like you're emphasizing facilitation skills or social work kind of skills. Like if you've done your training on like this is how you do knowledge transfer, and that's no longer the core element of your job, and we just haven't done really good job of preparing teachers for the changes that they experience in their classroom. And I would hope that this is something that we do differently. And the other thing that we haven't mentioned in this is that hallucinations are still a thing. So the AI that is teaching your child should ideally be more accurate than they currently are.
And I will
Or
take a hallucination with a good evaluation check over some of the current approved curriculum in my state.
okay, not a parent. So
I would choose one over the other hands.
All right.
100
Brian,
100%
even
choose
here in
more
Perth,
on
Western
this.
Australia,
Yeah.
we've heard about some of the stuff that goes on in your state in that department.
Okay, so if you didn't get it, the
conversation.
2 parents on the panel who have children currently in school both said hallucination, like absolutely over what is currently happening.
Well, yeah, Robert's not here, and we should admit if Robert was here, I have a sneaking suspicion he would have a huge pushback on this, I'm sure, which is, I love that we have all viewpoints here. I know you said we're going to get to the TLDR. I do want to mention one thing before we get to that as we wrap up is just because we didn't mention it. I did see a use case. I just wanted to bring it up. And this, again, was like from early on 2016. Ivy Tech was this college, and they hand-built algorithms at the time. I'm sure they're still doing stuff like this. And they predicted with initially 60 to 70 and eventually 80% accuracy within the first 2 weeks of a course, knowing whether a child is actually going to succeed or fail. And I think they were doing it actually at the it might be at the college level. Regardless, they got this thing up to like 80%. It identified 16,000 students, of which at that time, what they did was start making personal phone calls to find out what the things were. They found out electricity had gone out. They found out there was transportation issues. They found out all these things that they would not have known about, but this algorithm brought these students up. And it turns out it was for external factors in a lot of cases of what that child needed, or they just needed more resources here or whatever the case was. Anyway, very, very interesting. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. But this idea of very early on, not after the fact and then trying to figure out how we're going to fix it, but having those early indicators that maybe a human couldn't possibly pick up on their own because they can't, bring in that much data at once, leaning on these tools, these algorithms to say, hey, this is a red flag. This is a warning sign. We should be contacting and working and trying to figure out what we can do proactively to help these students. That alone, I think the implications of that, across the board, I think are really, really impressive. So just want to bring up that use case because it was really interesting to me. And I think there's going to be a lot more like that. But that was one of the ones I found out. Okay. So do we want to wrap things up with like either TLDR or like a sort of a last thoughts on this, if it's not like a TLDR necessarily, but what are you guys' last thoughts on this? How far off are we? Is this a next week thing, or is this going to take 5 to 10 years to really truly see roll out into our educational system? Just whoever wants to jump in.
Here's the tangible takeaway for any parent or any teacher wanting to apply a little AI to their student. If you are able to either get a AI chatbot, like a third party, and load it with your child's either curriculum or their current work, and then as a base prompt for that chatbot, make it be a teacher, and then using the information that you've provided, create like personalized lesson plans that fit the learning patterns or how your student has created content or whatever that is. I kind of thought of it now. I'm like, hey, if you want to try something a little different, use that and see if it gets your data and then applies that data and then uses it as a way to build a learning program going forward.
Nice.
And by the way, all that stuff, at least in the States, that's mandated by law. So like all the teaching points that your child is going through on any given week or whatever, that's all mandated by the state because it all has to be, all those points have to be hit by the teacher when they create their lesson plans. So you actually, as a parent, you actually have a pretty good starting resource for something like that, that's open and available on the internet because it has to be, or at least in the States, it has to be like that. So that's a really cool idea. I like that.
And if you don't know how to do that, Carl will set one up for you for 500.
I'm thinking that's a cool video series, personally. Like, all right.
That would be.
All right,
I wouldn't
Carl,
go to business idea.
my final thought on this is that
I'm the new teacher. I'm the new teacher.
My
Go ahead,
final
Andy.
thought is that there's huge disruption occurring in the workplace, and the educational system has been built to feed workers into the workplace, as well as, you know, advancing real elite academia to the point where we advance technology. AI is going to generate enormous surplus profits for small groups of people. That needs to be repurposed into education. I think it's a big mistake that AI could scalably deliver education directly into the home. I think we need to have a model for society that keeps the construct of a cohort of youth going through a process together in social context and learning how to be with each other. Otherwise, we have this fragmented society that is manipulable beyond, you know, my comfort level. So I think that we've gone in a progression from the use of AI for classification to generative AI, which actually produces content. The next wave is interactive, where you'll be able to interact with it. It's already emerging with ChatGPT Voice and Pi. Those are examples of that kind of interaction. The intelligent tutor and coach ought not to relegate humans into a relationship with their phone or their desktop.
Don't we already all have that now?
Only a relationship with your phone and your desktop.
I love my phone.
Yeah,
I'll do two
words.
things
Thanks,
real
Andy.
quick. One, I want to give a shout out to this podcast, Disrupt Education. You just made me think of it, Andy. This is done by a buddy of mine, Peter Hostrawser. He is a he's a high school teacher. He's done this podcast. I was actually a guest on this podcast maybe a year ago or more. I love what he's doing. When we talk about people who are thinking about how to genuinely help students succeed, I just absolutely love what he's doing. So I wanted to give him a quick shout out. And I didn't want to miss our comment from earlier today. Camilla, I hear you. The 1948, that's impressive. Ours was not a 1948 Encyclopedia Britannica. But that is pretty cool that you still have those, although I would not want to move them from house to house. So I wanted to give you a shout out as well. Okay, who else for key takeaways, TLDRs?
I think we're good.
I kind of really agree with Andy. I think although this technology is great, and I can see lots of things I like about it myself, but you know, my one major concern is the loss of socialization between humans and that whole human connections thing. You know, we know I can't remember that movie that the woman who was the AI voice and he fell in love with her, but we know that kind of stuff is going to happen. And so I think it's important that we make an effort with this from the youngest age up to adults to make sure that people still connect with each other in real life and learn those skills. Otherwise, I think we all end up with a society of robots, as it were, and we'll all be locked in our rooms, not talking to each other. And I just don't think that's good for our mental health.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, well, I know we ran over on this one, so another good conversation. I'm sure we could talk on and on and on. But tomorrow we'll be back talking about AI in the news. We'll be covering all the different news topics that we individually thought were interesting from the last 7 days. So come back tomorrow and check us out there. We have a show on AI and bias coming up later this week. So a lot of good topics coming up. And of course, we'll have more in the next following weeks. That's it for today, guys. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Tuesday, wherever you're at, whenever you're listening. This has been the Daily AI Show Live. You can check us out on various podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and several others. You can also check us out live daily on LinkedIn Live as well as YouTube Live, and we put the replays there as well. So lots of places to find us. Until then, see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for a great conversation.
See ya.
See you later.